Hey, everybody. I'm Dr. Seth, psychologist, and I automatically started to smile because I often smile and I try to laugh a lot as much as possible in my daily life. But I can't smile a lot in this video because this video is actually about something that's pretty serious and concerning when it comes to relationships. And today, what I want to talk about a little bit is contempt. So, first, before we go further and talk about contempt, I want to just explain the root word of contempt because I think a lot of times looking at the derivation of a word can kind of help us to understand the word better, what it really means, what the word stands for. So, with the word contempt, contempt stems from the Latin word contemnere, and that means to scorn, despise, or treat with disdain. To treat with disdain. And when I say that word disdain, it's almost like saying the word wants you to show a certain facial expression of disgust, disdain. And so contempt is one of the most concerning factors that can exist in a relationship between two people. And remember, relationship, that word doesn't mean romantic relationship. It means all your life relationships. A person can feel contempt in a relationship with a family member, with even a friend. Believe it or not, there are close friendships where actually, if you look underneath the surface, one or both members of the friendship can actually feel contempt toward the other. You can certainly have it in romantic relationships, in all kinds of relationships. And contempt is something that tends to live in relationships that are closer. And that would make sense because the more you are interdependent with a person, the more interactions you have. If they're negative ones, the more resentments and anger and contempt can build up. So, in that way, it makes perfect sense. But there's a lot of research on contempt, and John Gottman is one researcher, for example, who has talked about contempt as a feeling of superiority or disrespect for another. And that feeling of disrespect and superiority can show up in specific behaviors that show the contempt. So, one way to think about contempt is that it's not just a feeling, it's a feeling that also comes along with certain behaviors. And that is what I want to talk about today. If you yourself are engaging in any of these behaviors that I'm going to talk about that are a sign of contempt, it's important to stop and look at them and ask yourself what your plan is, what your motivation is. Is this a relationship that you want to keep? Is this a relationship that you might need to grow a little bit apart from? What is your plan in showing these behaviors? Because when people feel contempt, it's a problem. If you are on the receiving end of contempt from another person, it's important for you to talk about it with that person, to let them know, I am seeing signs of what feel like contempt to me. And I need to know what our plan is to correct this because I don't want to be on the receiving end of contempt. Okay, now, the first behavior I'm going to talk about is eye rolling. Eye rolling is one of the most common signs of contempt. Now, there's two different ways that a person can engage in eye rolling. One can show contempt, and one can be harmless and even playful. Here's the eye rolling that can show contempt. Somebody says something or does something, and I'll be the example. I, in response, do an eye roll. And you can see on my face when I do it, I feel disgust. I feel almost disbelief, like we've been here before. It's happening again. I can't believe it. I just want it to go away. I just want to sort of X it out. That is how an eye roll can show contempt, a disrespect and superiority for the other person. Now, on the other hand, here's a way that a person can do an eye roll, and it can feel like sort of a fun, even playful thing if you do it just once in a while. Now, you notice when I did that, I feel like I'm in acting class, by the way, but you notice when I did that, that I also had a smile on my face. My cheeks were relaxed into a smile, and my eyebrows were not furrowed. It didn't look like my face was constricted. The muscles in my face were tense and showing as if I'm in sort of some oppositional stance. No, it was like we're allies, and it's light and playful. So the kind of eye rolling that is serious faced and stern and is done as a pattern, that is the difference. That is often a sign of contempt. Now, another sign of contempt in a relationship can be sarcasm. Sarcasm. And there are different ways that a person can be sarcastic. But if somebody, as a pattern, is making sarcastic responses, they have sarcastic reactions to you that don't feel loving, that actually feel kind of biting sarcasm. It almost feels like a microaggression. You feel like there is an aggressiveness to it, the intention to actually make someone feel bad. And that kind of biting sarcasm, absolutely 100%, can make this air of seeming like someone is above something or superior, or they just have disdain or disrespect for the other person. Too much sarcasm is not a good thing in a relationship, especially when it's left. It's things are just said, sarcastic things are just said and dropped, and the look, the expression on the face is just unloving, maybe even just dismissive or nasty. That's not good for any relationship and often a sign of contempt. Now, another sign of contempt in a relationship is sort of lecturing to another person, engaging in the lecture. The person always knows better. It's as if they're speaking from a podium or into a microphone, or maybe as if they've got a clipboard and they're kind of listening to what you're saying and evaluating it or reviewing it. It's never good enough. You're wrong there. No, I don't think so. Sort of like it's never enough. That lecturing tone, as if one person is the parent and the other is a child who should know better, that lecturing tone can be a sign of contempt. And adults, nobody needs to be lectured to unless you're in a classroom and you're earning credit for it. Okay? Nobody needs to be lectured to. Adults have sat through enough classrooms and lectures as children from their teachers, from their parents over so many years. Nobody wants to be lectured to in any voluntary relationship. It feels humiliating and demeaning, and people get sick of it. But it's often a sign of contempt, so know that. And then finally, the last behavior that I want to talk about is acting morally superior. A person who acts morally superior to another in the things they say and they do, sometimes in their expressions, sometimes it's simply an expression or a look one person can give to another that shows that disdain. A lot of times the chin is sort of raised, cocked, really, as if the person is cocking their chin, kind of launching a look designed to make somebody else around them feel like what they've done is not up to par, is morally reprehensible, disgusting, perhaps, trying to shame the other person. Looks of superiority or words of superiority, making somebody feel less than in that way because the other person is morally higher. This is often a sign of contempt. Okay. So these signs are really important. If you are a part of a relationship where either you might be engaging in this behavior with another, do your best to try to understand what is it that might make me feel contempt, that disdain, that dislike, maybe even moments of hatred for this person. What is causing that? And if you are on the receiving end of it, it's important to talk about it. You deserve the right. If you're on the receiving end of contempt, you deserve the right to address it, to be able to say it. Hey, I am feeling something from you that I don't want to feel. And this is not in my mind. I am not imagining it. These are different examples of what you're doing with your face when you do it. These are different examples of some of the words you're saying to me. And we need a plan, whether you're doing it yourself or you're on the receiving end of it. In any relationship, if it's going to be good, if it's going to work, both members, people in a relationship, they need to have a plan. What is the plan to improve things? Now, therapy, of course, can always be a plan. If it's a romantic relationship or even a relationship between family members, you can talk to a therapist and go in together and try to work out your issues. There are a lot of good self-help books that you can turn to for relationship repair. If this is not something that you're doing now, but you've done in the past, make sure you understand why doing that to somebody isn't right. It's important to understand, have some empathy for how the other person might feel to be on the receiving end of this. It's important to be clear to say, I engaged in that behavior in the past, but I will not do that in the future. Why? Because I want to invest in my relationship, and every behavior that I engage in today, every behavior will accumulate years down the road to have developed a good relationship, not to have done something today or any other day that could get stacked onto other negative things I've done and accumulate into resentment or worse, contempt. Okay? I'm Dr. Seth, psychologist,